Hey, can you remember the last time you received a flyer, like a physical paper flyer, or maybe even a brochure or a newspaper? Those things are print media, and we're going to talk about those along with email and internet today. So come on into the room and let's learn about these three different forms of media. You're listening to Marketing Adventure, the hub for business, fashion, marketing, and other CTE educators who integrate marketing into the learning experience. I'm your host, Jackie Walker. Each week, I'll cover marketing education concepts, strategies, tips, trends, frameworks, and other information to equip you to connect your classroom to digital natives while cultivating an engaged learning environment. So come on into the room where your favorite beverage, snacks, and even your cell phone are all welcome. Welcome back as we continue our series on advertising and talking about the various forms of media. Well, we talked about broadcasting and outdoor signage last week. This week, we are focused on print, email, and internet. So let's get on into this conversation so we can just go over what those types of media are and what they consist of. So first off is print media. Now, the print media that I'm going to discuss is 5 different types. We're going to talk about brochures, direct mail, flyers, magazines, and newspaper. Now, if you are a millennial or a Gen A or a newbie, a younger person, anybody under 18, you may look and think like, who even reads a newspaper? Who even flips through a magazine? Well, let's talk about it because these forms of media are still around and they still do their job in advertising for the companies that are looking to get their brands and their names out there. So first, we have the brochure. Now, a brochure generally is a trifold promotional document that lists details and information about the company and or the product and services or the person that is being advertised. So it's really simple to produce a brochure. And this is one of the main things I would have my students to put together because it's simple and it allows them to practice on formatting information into a document or even into an advertisement. So like I said, they're very simple to produce. It's usually 11 by 8.5 paper that's used for a trifold brochure. They're very flexible and versatile as far as the information that you can put into it. It's very budget friendly because we're talking about printing information on paper and then folding that information and then handing it to someone directly or putting it in the mail, which is a lot cheaper than a lot of other forms of media out there. Now, within your brochure, you want to make sure, of course, that you have text information because you're telling the consumer or the potential buyer about your product, service, or an individual. But you also can put pictures into your brochures, which will help bring the image to life of what it is that you're promoting. And nowadays, you can use things such as QR codes. A QR code is like a barcode where you can scan it and it will go to the linked information that is made up into the QR code. I love to use those. There are several QR code makers out there that allow you to type in on their website, it allows you to type in the website or the image or the link that you want the person to go to when they scan the QR code, and it'll bring it up on their phone once they scan it, and they can go ahead and fill out a form, type in some information, or it'll take them to an image where they can see the image that you're talking about in the brochure, or it can take them to the website where they can start browsing the website. But you can put those QR codes and scan bars in your brochures to help connect the members. So even though you're using a more I wouldn't say antiquated form of media, but an older version of media, you can still connect it to the newer version of media to promote your brand, your product, your service, or whatever it is that your company is wanting to advertise. So that is brochure. All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is direct mail. Now, direct mail is one of those things that I think a lot of companies have moved away from that but they really might want to consider going back into this area because direct mail is physical marketing information put directly into the hand of the consumer because the information is being sent directly to where they live. These are very targeted markets. Most times, or all the time, the person who is sending out the direct mail buys a list of consumers' names and addresses, and it may be a very mass marketed campaign depending on the industry, or it could be a very targeted campaign depending on who is sending out that direct mail. As an example, industries that send direct mail, mostly mass direct mail, are your cable companies, your streaming companies, telephone companies, automobile dealerships, because they want to reach as many people as possible. And because when they're sending it to their physical home where they live, whether it's a house or an apartment, that person likely needs cable, internet, phone, or a vehicle. So it doesn't matter. So when that mail comes to the house, it could have that individual's name on it, or most times it's going to say current resident. It may say the individual's name or current resident because it doesn't matter to the company who they are reaching out to. They just want to get their information into the hands as many people as possible. So if the person that they put up the name on that address doesn't live there, it doesn't matter. The next person who moved in still may need the same services. And so they want to be able to put their brand out there, their product, their service out there, and have that person give them a call to buy their product or services. Now, it's very flexible. Direct mail is. It's very versatile, just like a brochure, because you have freedom of creativity. You have freedom of who you send this message out to. And because you can design it any kind of way that you want to, there's really no parameters around it. It's very budget friendly, just as a brochure is, because printing doesn't cost a lot, and putting it on paper and mailing it doesn't cost a lot, as compared to all of these other forms of media. Now, it has a higher return on investment because you are putting a product or a document directly into the hand of a potential consumer. Um, Again, you have the freedom of design, message, and the audience that you want to target because you pull a list based on various details. It could be just based on the zip code. You could buy a list based on zip code. You could buy a list based on other demographic information, age, gender. It could be a variety of things that you request on the list that you purchase as an advertiser. And you send that information out to that particular list of people. And it gets directly into their hands. Also, the results can be easily evaluated because when you put a discount code or any kind of unique information on that direct mail and you have that person go to your website or fill out a form or whatever they're doing and they put in that code, you know where it comes from because You've only given that code or assigned that identifier to that direct market item. All right. And now the downside of direct mail is that it can be considered junk mail. If something comes to your house, it doesn't have your name on it, and it's not a bill, it's not a personal document directed to you. You could just toss it in the trash because you're like, oh, this is just junk mail. All right. But the best thing about direct mail is that it does engage the customer with a physical marketing element. I know for me, I personally love to receive direct mail. Many times when there are things going on in my community, or I didn't hear about a sale or something, I'm like, why did I not receive something in the mail to tell me about this? Because I'm not going to necessarily be on somebody's website. I'm not necessarily going to be, stalking someone's social media. I don't watch a lot of television, and I'm not really listening to like my local broadcast. Really, when I'm listening to anything on my phone, it's a podcast. So, or it could be like a streaming radio service. So I'm not necessarily going to hear about local things. So for me, ideally, receiving direct mail is going to work for me, because when I get it in the mail, I can look at it and say, oh, okay, yeah, I want to go to this. I want to attend this. And or I can toss it away and say, I'm not interested in this. But I really hate when things go on in my community and I'm like, why didn't I notice about this? Why didn't someone tell me about this? Why didn't they send out a postcard? So direct mail, although it is one of the older forms of communication, and of forms of media, it is highly effective. And I really think retailers need to consider going back to this as one of their main forms of reaching out to their customers. The next form of print is a flyer. Now, a flyer, I hear this when I first heard this a few years ago when someone said, we're going to create a flyer when they were speaking of digital, something online. I'm like, a flyer is physical, a flyer is paper with print. But I know that now the word flyer has transcended into the digital world as well. But today, I'm talking about the physical paper flyer. Now, we don't see those a lot these days because everything is very digitally focused. However, a flyer, just like the brochure, is very flexible and versatile. It's very budget friendly. It's something that you can put into the hand of a potential consumer. It's very easy to target your market with a flyer. I know we use flyers a lot when I was teaching, and I would have my students to make these little postcards or flyers and hand them out. Now, the downside is that people can dump them. They can, sometimes, well, a lot of times, we would see our little flyers or postcards laying on the ground of the lunch area, right? Because the students look at it, read it, and toss it. But a flyer does allow for you to immediately get the information to the hand of someone who wasn't looking for it necessarily. So it's good to make flyers. And if you're at an event, pass those flyers out so that you can get people to immediately look at your business, your brand, your product, your service. And they then can make a determination if they want to scan a QR code or call the number or go to the website that is printed on the flyer. So again, the flyer is very much like the brochure and the direct mail because it is print, it's flexible, it's versatile. You get to determine your market and it immediately puts something in the hand of the potential consumer. Now, these other two forms of print media are the more expensive type of print media because we're talking about, first of all, a magazine. A magazine is a printed booklet with several pages that are themed. They could be a periodical type magazine. They generally come out monthly, quarterly, annually, biannually. It just really depends on what the magazine is, who the magazine is. But it does cost a lot to advertise in a magazine because you are paying for the production of a set to take pictures for the magazine. You're talking about high resolution. You're talking about a lot of bold color, and it takes a lot of money for them to actually produce the magazine, because we're not talking about just simple little paper that you put in a copier and run 1,000 prints of a flyer off. We're talking about something that is bound with heavier paper. It's bound. It has high resolution pictures. It has a high intensity color, and it's heavier. And it is something that is purchased by a consumer. Now, advertising in a magazine is for retailers, it gives them a very specific market that they can target, because magazines are created for very particular markets. So, if we're talking about, like, say, fashion magazines, you're thinking about your Vogue, your Elle, your Harper's Bazaar, those type of magazines, they have very specific markets. And so you're going to see like your high end fashion, you're going to see like your brands, like your designers, your high end designers, because they have larger advertising budgets that they can spend money to promote in a magazine. You're talking about, even, I mean, even if it's not the high end designers and the retailers that are, large chain retailers or anything like that, any company that puts their information or advertisement into a magazine tends to be a very national or global brand, because of the affordability of doing an ad in a magazine. Now, it enables retailers to benefit from the national circulation of the magazine. So that's the purpose. They want to be able to appeal to consumers around the world. It allows retailers to show accurate colors and details, because of the high resolution and the intense colors. So it really brings the product to life. The readers of the magazine can look at the information for an extended period of time, because when you buy a magazine, you tend to look through it over, multiple times. And even if you don't look at it multiple times, you still have that magazine. And when you do pick it up again and flip through it, you're likely to see or read a little bit more than you did the first time, and see the advertisement. So you'll see the advertisement multiple times. Now, because there is so much money put into advertising in a magazine, the brand is trustworthy, because if you're going to put this much effort, time, and money into an ad, then the buyer, the potential buyer, will know that you are serious, because you're spending this large amount of money, and they will know that they can trust that you will stand by your product because of the effort, time, and money that is put into the advertisement. Again, it's high cost. Advertising in a magazine takes a longer lead time, because of all of the things that you have to do to prep the ad for the magazine, because of the photo shoots and all of those things that are happening. And then because magazines are created months in advance of the issue date. So you have to consider the lead time that it takes for your ad to get into a magazine and reach your potential audience and consumers. But the benefit is the professional preparation of the magazine, and you, like you said, you are assured that you're trustworthy, because you have taken the time, effort, and money to put into your brand to be in a magazine. So magazines are still around. Although magazines are now online, they are still around. As a matter of fact, I would have my students to bring magazines for extra credit, so that we can use them when we were working on activities and projects in class. So they are still buying magazines. Teens are still buying magazines and reading them, especially as fashion teens. The last print media is newspaper. Now, they say that newspapers are dying, and they really are. But you still have your baby boomers and some of your Gen X who are hanging around reading through newspapers. Newspapers are the oldest form of print media. And it features a lot of different sections of the newspaper, various articles and advertisements are in there. And with the newspaper, the advertisements within a newspaper tend to be local because the newspaper tends to be about local news, local things that are going on, etc. Unless it's a national brand like New York Post, Wall Street Journal. So those tend to make it around nationally. USA Today, all of those tend to make it around the national scene as far as circulation. But your newspapers tend to be a local newspaper. And again, they'll have local advertisements. Generally, department stores, car dealerships, things that you receive in direct mail, like the cable, streaming, phone services, things of that nature. I don't see a lot of fashion retailers advertising in newspapers today because it's just the reach is just not there. The market is just not there. But some details about newspapers that they're produced on varied schedules. It could be weekly, daily, bi-weekly, quarterly, etc., just depending on the newspaper itself and who their target audience is. It provides for verbal and visual communication, verbal in the form of text, visual as far as pictures and you being able to read it. They're geographically, again, circulated to reach a very specific audience. The ads can come in various sizes, whether they are a quarter of a page, a full page, half page, or just maybe a business size advertisement. They come in various sizes. And of course, the cost of the ad is based upon the size of the ad that you choose to use. It's relatively easy to produce, low cost. And again, because of the platform that you're choosing to use or the form you're choosing to use, it's trustworthy. Because if you're going to go through the process of putting an ad in a newspaper, you're likely to be a trustworthy source. Now, because of the digital age, you're just likely not to find newspapers around very much. And you can also get your newspaper online. Most of them do have a small fee for receiving the newspaper online digitally, but more people are willing to pay that small fee just so they don't have to deal with the actual paper. So that is newspaper, your oldest form of print media. Now, I said before that we were going to talk about print media, email, and internet. However, print, because it had 5 different types of media, took a little bit longer than I desired. What I'm going to do is roll email and internet into the next episode. So see you next week for episode 54 when we talk about email marketing and internet marketing. Until then, have a wonderfully blessed day. Thanks for listening to Marketing Adventure. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode with someone you think would benefit from the information shared here today. If you have any questions or want to connect with me, find me on Instagram at Marketing Adventure. All links and resources discussed in this episode can be found in the show notes at marketingadventure.com.